Doug TenNapel, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Jackson.
Pleasure having you. Um, where did all the high art go?
Ooh. Um, Certainly aged out with a lack of a patronage system. So without the primarily the Catholic Church funding everything, symphonies, sculptures, that most of the high art was made before the Industrial Revolution.
Yep.
So post-industrial revolution, there's probably more people with those little statues of the David out of plaster in their garden than going to the Louvre to have to see the David. Or David's not at the Louvre, but Winged Victory is.
Yeah.
So I think the printing press, and it's not all bad. It's good. You get an image, you can get a print of the Mona Lisa in your house.
Right.
So you put that poster up. And then came a form of art that was actually poster and print driven, pamphlets, magazines, high color magazines, prints in the early 1900s, Norman Rockwell's covers on the
Mm-hmm.
Saturday Evening Post. Um, I just think it got replaced by cheaper, fast, popular pop art.
Yeah. Which is kind of a sign of the times. Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot less um, emphasis on creating things that are long lasting, as opposed to things that are just entertaining.
Yeah, it's a cause and effect thing though. It's not entirely immoral. It was probably an accident that it destroyed beauty or made things cheap or junkier. Um, I think it was just a normal evolution of uh, the disruption of industry. Anytime tech comes in, it disrupts everything. Right along with tractor farming instead of pulling a mule, assembly lines, building things, vacuum cleaners, blenders, all that. It made everything cheap and disposable, or a little more, right?
Right.
Calories, McDonald's, cheap and disposable. You know, spaghetti on the store shelf, just everything. Uh, More of it was made. Whereas I think in the age of that fine art, I think it was very hard to make things. If you wanted a piece of armor, it had to be hand hammered by some big guy down the street. Uh, so you can't poo-poo the disappearance of high art, cathedrals, and all that without poo-pooing the basic conveniences of you no longer had like a central cathedral that you all had to go to.
Right.
You go to a little church on the corner in an ugly box with a TV screen and a sound system.
Yeah. No, and it's we don't have the Catholic Church doing that anymore but back then it was the only art you would create was good art because you could only create so many pieces in your life. It was a much more finite number. It felt like,
Yeah, and top down driven. Who was commissioning the art?
right,
The church. Well, right around the late 1800s, early 1900s, you have Edward Monk's The Screen. Ugly. Late 1800s, early 1900s. It's emotional. It's personal. Vincent van Gogh. Emotional madness. Personal. There was no longer he didn't care about the market. There was no top down person saying you will only paint the Pope and Jesus realistically. So suddenly it became much more individualistic and representational, I think, of the small person and not society in general. So they were not like ideas that united us on this big mass thing. It was more personal, like, what do I want to draw? What do I want to paint?
right, yeah. You stated that your art is just quote my opinion of what should exist.
Yeah.
That sounds like a continuation of that theme. Um, is is it then true that that is bad? Because now we live in bottom up. Whatever the audience wants is kind of what gets made, um, as opposed to what the church wants.
Yeah, I don't think I've said this before, and this is a basic belief of mine that tools are not by necessity bad, right? They're neutral.
Right.
So what you're seeing is the masses able to say something and come to find out they're not saying much more true things than even the church was, because we believe, or I believe, that the Catholic Church said some lies.
Hmm.
And so, but they controlled all of the paintings and all of the cathedrals, all the stained glass windows with an iron fist. And so the individual creator was not able to, address the boss. He didn't have any say over a pope.
Yeah.
So I think the cause of things being bad, this is true for our country too, which has a great system of government, but in the hands of bad people, it looks like a fraud, you know? So, so the art being controlled by a giant liar is no better or worse than the art controlled by a lot of little liars with even less craftsmanship.
But there is no doubt that the giant liar produced some art that is truly beautiful, truly is
Yeah.
magnificent. Right?
Yeah.
Why is it that the all the little liars are not having the same effect?
That would be skill. So the big liar, it wasn't just, depicting its own faith claims of the Catholic Church with great paintings. It also did incredible nature
Hmm.
artwork,
Yeah.
and it was beautiful, regardless of whether if it was Catholic or not. But something about those that time after the first millennia, from 1000 to the year two, probably to the year 1850, uh, that they were way more skills oriented. Those skills peaked at the late 1800s with romantic art, over the
Hmm.
top, voluptuous renderings. Bouguereau and, John Singer Sargent came out of that. Rembrandt, right? Over the top perfection. And then something broke. And I'm not so sure it's immorality. I really do think it was kind of a punk rock populist spirit of the individual just said, I'm going to paint what I want. I'm not painting for the state. I'm not even painting for the church. So things were just in general more skill based, just because you didn't have mass manufacturing. And, in general, if you wanted something and you were a normal grunt, a normal guy walking around, you probably had a much greater skill set than we do on being able to make anything, like from a wagon to a piece of furniture to building a house. Lots of people built their houses from scratch.
Right.
You weren't like some architectural engineer. You just had a better grasp of what a hammer and nail does, or a chisel, or a peg. They had nailless houses. They would put it all together with wooden pegs. So the skill set of everyone was greater, I think.
Yeah. Was it just pent up aggression that people wanted to, they wanted to do their own thing? They felt upset, almost angry that they were
I
being
don't
told
attribute
to.
it to anger. I might, maybe to rebellion, if there's anything to it, or rugged individualism, maybe selfishness,
Yeah.
maybe a light form of postmodernism coming in and saying my truth is real because it's mine, and I don't have to follow your truth.
Yeah, and
So
that's an idea that's kind of flowed throughout the rest of the culture as well.
yeah, it's everywhere. That's what I mean. It's not unique to the arts.
Right.
I mean, go to the White House and look at the buildings they were making out of marble. The entire Lincoln Memorial and all that, early 1900s, and that was definitely a throwback to a classical, right,
Hmm.
Roman column period. So they're trying to say that this is longer lasting, is I think what they were trying to project into those buildings. And then slowly those skill sets, I don't see people carving great things. I mean, they're still out there, but they're like nutty artisans,
Yeah.
nutty retro. You know, if you see some guy doing an incredible woodcut today, you're going, wow, that guy's like going full Amish on us. It's not normal, but you'll see the same thing in our time with old fashioned people that demand to write their own books instead of use AI. And that old fashioned guy, you know, he has a robot, but he won't let him mow the lawn because he wants to garden himself. And that guy will be kind of like that old, someone with more skill set, uh, carving things out of rock instead of casting them, which is easier.
Yeah. But there's a beauty in doing the things yourself.
Oh,
I
yeah.
talked to C.R. Wiley a couple of weeks ago, and he said, never do for a human what it should do for itself. Um, I I I wonder if in
Mm, mm. Yeah, I'm going to disagree with C.R. Wiley on some of that. I need to have a discussion with him on this.
what would you say?
Well, do you grow your own penicillin?
No,
Okay.
but
Do you shred your own paper and make your own toilet paper? I mean, what is he going to define as what you should do for yourself?
that was the question I had for him as well. I
You
think he
don't,
defined it somewhat spiritually.
yeah, you don't weave your own shirt. You didn't, but Gandhi did. He wove his own clothing his whole life.
Yeah.
You didn't weave your own shirt at a big loom. You'll spend your whole time weaving shirts. Now, is there something cathartic about that? Is there something truer about that? Probably. But you have to be willing to remove about 90% of the things that you use in your life. I mean, you can walk instead of drive. Why drive when you could do it yourself? And he'll go, well, of course, I don't mean that. But he did fly to Moscow,
Yes, he
Moscow
did.
to make, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. He could have ridden a horse or walked. So, so I'm a little suspect of the premise of that statement that never let something else do for you what you should do for yourself. That said, let me find some agreement with him that anything that you choose to do is going to be more edifying than any, and you'll have more ownership in it than anything you choose to let someone else do. Like if you, my wife made a vest for me, you know, she would sew the vest. I have also purchased vests, and the one that she made for me has more value to me, and I feel more of her love in it when I wear it. It probably isn't even as well made as the one that was mass manufactured, but because there's more skin in the game on it, I value it more. So I just don't believe the never thing. What you do choose to do, and so let's say that art probably is pretty personal and pretty important and ought to be done by hand at some point if you really want to enjoy it. Um, One of my mentors at church, a guy named Jason Parolini, I was talking about how great Grok was at Bible study. You know, I can use it for word reference. And I ask it what like Owen and Hodge wrote about a subject, and it'll just give me a rundown of it. Oh, compare to Calvin, compare to Luther, compare to, did Thomas Aquinas ever write on this subject? And da 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 da, you know, down it comes. And he goes, oh, Doug, and that's so thin. He goes, I am so edified that I open my book and do the hand study and make my hand notes. And you can imagine that in a Bible study situation, getting more intimate with opening up a concordance, looking up the Greek instead of having an AI spit it out. The AI spits out the correct answer. There's something about putting your skin in the game and doing it. So, probably the most important things you would not want to offload to someone else.
Like thinking.
Well, what about teaching your kids in a public school?
I would disagree with that wholeheartedly. I don't think that there should be as many kids in the public schools,
Yeah.
especially not the public schools we have right now.
Yeah. I've got Doug Wilson's book, Keep Your Kids or whatever, Raise Your Kids, Keep Your Kids
Yeah, yeah,
Against School. But just to let you know that is considered a luxury that most people go for. Again, in the last 100 years, when we
Oh
offloaded
yeah.
education to a big public institution. So
Right.
that's one example, though. Uh, that's a great moral case to make
Yeah.
against education. That do it yourself because it's so important. Same with hiring nannies or having daycare for your kids.
Yeah.
Maybe you should do that one yourself. So yeah, if you go to art, maybe you should do that yourself.
Yeah. The trick is, where do you draw the line?
Hmm.
What is
Hmm.
necessary to do yourself, and what is not?
And
And
that's a matter of your pursuits that you are going to commit yourself to, because you don't have an obligation to do art. You don't have to do art.
right. Yeah.
I wouldn't even say you should do art, because if you're an accountant, you should do accounting, you know, and you can do art to whatever degree you want. So we also have just infinite number of options that people never had before. You know, you're just much more limited on, if your dad hammered armor, you probably were going to hammer armor, inherit
Mm-hmm.
the farm and take it over and all that. So
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you draw that line and what you choose uh, is going to be what your values are for your own life.
Yeah. And even the trouble with saying you should think for yourself is, most of the things that you think are just pieces of information and thoughts that you've received and inherited from others. Um, it's hard to have a truly original thought in that sense. And so the question is, um, do you have a problem with AI being the source of the thought, or do you need it to be a person, or a book, or whatever it
Yeah,
is?
not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I don't see a difference at all, because the books we're just gaining the wisdom that someone else earned. Some other guy, when we learn Aristotle's laws of logic, A is A cannot be both A and not A at the same time and in the same way. Law of non-contradiction. He
Right.
discovered that. He didn't create it,
Yeah.
he discovered it. I learned it much faster than he did because I just read his book,
Yeah.
Books of Wisdom. We gain that wisdom without having to earn it. And even now we call it earning it when you just read it. That guy, Pascal, discovered everything. And I just read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So uh, we're not purist about a whole lot of what we ingest, and learning history. I'm always reading someone else's work they did, reading a map. Someone else mapped and charted everything. Um, so I think we benefit. We stand on the shoulders of giants by just consuming what the past has brought us in all of thought and all of tradition. And there's lies among it, but mostly it's true stuff that stands the test of time. So
Yeah.
we're the benefactor of a huge library. And I
Right.
carry that whole library on my phone. I just touch a button and I can call up anything. Uh, like I said with my friend Jason Parolini, it still doesn't mean that you shouldn't study a subject you love.
Right.
I'm an artist. I use AI for art where it will spit stuff out for me, but I still enjoy hand drawing it. You know,
Yeah.
I even did digital art on my Cintiq, which is very fast, very efficient, and very successful. But I
Right.
still like hand drawn. I've done books since then by hand with no undo, and it's funner and more humane, but just not always as practical, to a point that sometimes I won't do a book. It's so hard to do. So now I'm anti creating because I'd rather do it right.
Right. Yeah. No, and I wonder if, because you mentioned people like Aristotle, Plato, they they kind of had nothing to work with, and so they went from 0 to 1. Hey, I think A cannot be not A.
Right.
Um, if we don't have to arrive at that conclusion ourselves, I wonder if creativity will slow to an extent, because we kind of outsource all creativity to AI.
I don't think so. Uh, I think it's a natural building of art, not a not a shortcut or a cheat.
Hmm.
If you go back on history on what people were doing, they went from having to discover a whole lot of stuff themselves to reading scrolls, and that information had limited movement because of those scrolls. Then the printing press, you have much broader movement of the printing of the Bible,
Right.
the first 50,000 copies that went around the world. And before that, you likely didn't have access to a complete Bible. That was even just like one Bible per church. Then it
Right.
became one Bible per family with the Schofield Bible that was trying to get one in every home. So I think that's an important distribution of truth. Not, and you could say, I'm a purist. I want to hand scribe my Bible. Okay. Uh, I'll
Go
take,
at it.
I read my Bible app, listen to audiobooks. I have a real Bible over there. And then I have everyone barking at me because I read NIV. You can't read that. I'm like, dude, this book is a miracle. It never should have even gotten to me. So, so built on top of that is mass media arts and the disposable arts going out on social media.
Right.
Uh, I don't know if I can defend it that well, but we laugh at memes. We laugh at The Simpsons. We laugh at stand-up comics. We are moved by movies like Lord of the Rings. Those are all built on top of past creations and then
Mm-hmm.
mass dispersed. You lose some information. You streamline it to make it full of a little more empty calories, even a little more salt and sugar to make it taste better. And then everyone does their versions of it. It influences and disperses itself throughout culture. And that I don't think you'd have a Harry Potter without Lord of the Rings. I don't think you'd have Game of Thrones without Lord of the Rings, kind
Right.
of sword and sorcery stuff. So it makes its way out. Well, then comes AI. Now AI is built on top of art. It is built not on top of art, but on top of pop media, what came before it.
Right.
And people keep their head is stuck in the past of what they think we're doing today with pop media, what they think we're doing today with pop media, right? And what we do is you make a book or a Twitter post and you send it out to everyone, right? So that part they get correct. But then they project that onto AI and think that's what AI is doing. That is not what AI is doing. AI is saying now, instead of you creating one page of a book where you have amassed all this information in the past, how to draw things by other people, ink techniques by other people, text techniques, story structure by other people, it now lets you paint with all of that. So now you
Right.
can paint with an entire book.
Yeah.
Paint it, push the button. It's it's just one step more of what it did before. And we're only seeing the very beginning of what it does. So, but what it's emulating is what you wanted to do by hand to some degree. You wanted to hire a crew to shoot a hot rod, you know, going down a road with smoke coming out of it. It's all beat up in 70s looking in a post-apocalyptic world. And you have to have about $250 million to shoot that shot and hire that crew. And now a third grader can do it in 15 minutes by typing in, I want, a post apocalyptic hot rod going down the road with smoke coming out of it. And boom, it gives it to you.
Yeah.
What crime was committed?
None. But the question is the art less valuable
Well,
because of
yeah.
its the effort put into its creation?
No, because I'm not paid by the hour. There's some of the greatest works ever made were not paid directly to the creator. Moby Dick never sold out of its first printing in Melville's lifetime. He died thinking Moby Dick did not sell out of its first printing of 3,500 books. Thought it was a failure, commercial failure. Now, if he waited around going, I want to get paid for writing the world's greatest novel, he never would have written it. He wrote it for different reasons. So we
Yeah.
can be creating for different reasons than uh, certainly than monetary value. I'm not talking about utility. I understand that you could also mean a true good and beautiful sense of value. But I actually think there's going to be beautiful creations that come out of AI. I think it's going to be amazing. It's just going to be whole creations. You're going to be able to just go, I want that car to go down a road. I want it to go on the hero's journey. I want it to have a breakdown where it almost dies in the third act and or it dies and it's broken in a junkyard and someone comes and resurrects it from the dead and saves it and puts it back on the road, paint fine, it's on a new journey. That's the
Right.
the Christian story, but you'll tell it using just AI and you don't have to hire your crew.
Yeah.
The disruption and the anger that everyone has is the old system saying you don't have to hire a crew. You have to hire a crew. You'll know my shot looks exactly like what you shot 20 years ago. And now my third grader can write that shot and you're angry because, yeah, they all know the jig is up. They were doing it for the money, and it's not going to be as monetarily valuable. It's not going to be as monetarily valuable. So they're fighting that disruption. But if that story does its job and it can put an illusion in front of you to get you to believe that journey to the same degree that it does when it's handmade 20 years ago, it did its job of telling you a story, you, the viewer. And I believe AI is going to get there to a point that you can't tell the difference between something written by AI or a person, or maybe a person like me who has limited musical ability, but it will help a musical cripple like me to make a symphony. And that symphony might make you cry. And it was free, and I did it in 15 minutes. So,
Right.
what amount of my time has to go into it before you respect it? Or is not the response of what you do with it, your response to it, doesn't that tell you the truth about it? That it was
Yeah.
something good?
Yeah. Yeah. But then the question is, why create at all if creation is so easy? What is the point of art, of creation?
Well, your question has something smuggled into it that creation must be hard, and I don't think it has to be hard. I don't think it was hard for God.
No.
Spoke it into existence, blew the whole stars out. I actually think physical creation was easy for him,
Yeah.
effortless.
Right. Yes.
He
But
didn't
he's
have to. He
God.
didn't break a sweat.
Yeah.
So
But
why
he's
should
God.
you?
Well, because of the fall and because of the fact that we are made to work.
Well, that is true that you were made to work, but it's still going to be some amount of work to cue the AI. It's not going to be. I actually do believe there will be AI creators that just self-create forever garbage. You can just
Yeah.
program it to keep
Oh
making
yeah, absolutely.
infinitely. So I do believe that'll be there. Who knows what the AI mind will come up with? I'm using the word mind in quotes, but my point is that when we consume something, I don't believe we think of the source. It is not about the source.
Yeah. Yeah.
People watch Lord of the Rings and they don't care about the original books and enjoy the
Well,
movie.
some do. Some are very concerned that like the book isn't the same as the movie, or the other way around. They're very concerned with the accuracy of the movie. They like the movie because they liked the book before it, not because of the movie itself.
What's the truth in the Lord of the Rings book?
Well, what do you mean?
What was it about? The big picture.
It was a great story.
I know, but what makes it great? What is the invisible truth that's throughout the whole book?
It's a story of redemption and resurrection.
Right.
It's a,
And
it's a Christian story.
it's Christian story, but he didn't perfectly accurately depict the Bible. He took
No.
liberties, and then the movie
Yes.
took liberties.
Yeah.
And you still like the book, though it was different than the Bible in
Right.
places. So you're allowed to take liberties. I think that's part of how we as sub creators participate in God. We're not actually uh, we can't perfectly copy what God did because we're not a creator in the way that he is. So
Hmm.
at best, all we can do is do mashups. And Tolkien's was a mashup
Yeah,
of the truth. And then the movie was a mashup of his book,
of Tolkien's truth. Yeah,
Tolkien's truth. And
absolutely.
when I make my Lord of the Rings movie next year for free, it will be a mashup of his movie, of Jackson's movie. And
Yeah,
it'll cost no money.
yeah.
You just
I wonder if it.
type it
I
up.
would. Yeah, I wonder if it's just maybe the artists who are, because when I watch a movie, since I've worked in film, I think of the work that went into producing that. I think
Oh,
of
yeah.
like the lighting and the sound and the cinematography. But
And
the
we're
average
impressed
person
because
does
it's
not.
difficult.
Yes, exactly.
It's looking at
Um,
Michelangelo's David,
right.
and you go, wow, that's hard. He could have
Yeah.
made it out of butter.
Yeah.
He could have made it smaller, make it easier, but he
Yeah.
didn't. That's just kind of showing off, though. That's like making the Eiffel Tower out of toothpicks and going, look what I did. I
But
wasted
it's
I wasted more time than you. Giant ball of twine, world's largest
and
ball of twine right over here.
yeah, and he got paid for it.
He got paid for it, yeah.
The best brag ever. Um, but the but if art is maybe this is just an assumption I have. I think art is supposed to inspire, um, and part of the inspiration comes from the difficulty of producing it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have, for instance, if you were to try and create a building, you want to create something like for instance, the cathedral that's going up in Spain right now, although they're out of electricity. But um, that's the kind of thing that inspires people. It fills you with hope, admiration, you know, because you see it as extremely difficult to make. You
Mm-hmm.
see it as a lot of time and dedication and hard
Mm-hmm.
work that went into this.
Big things are worth doing.
Right.
I read Moby Dick and I go, I don't know how you do this. You know, that guy's nuts. He's huge. His brain is huge. His work is hard. Lord of the Rings, too.
Right.
You're reading endless pages of them walking over hills and having meals and all that. I'm just going like, holy cow.
Yeah.
The size, the size does matter. You know, quality and quantity combined is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I just don't think I don't think inherently things have to take time.
But in order to, um, I think to prove value, it does. Even if not to prove not value but good work, you can create a very well done on the outside layer video of a car driving down the road in a post-apocalyptic world,
Mm-hmm.
but it is not as valuable, and I think therefore less
I
good at.
disagree. I wholly disagree that it's not as valuable.
Are you saying that from an audience perspective or from
Yeah,
an artist's perspective?
because its purpose is to inspire.
Right.
You said that. So
Yes.
if that, and I don't know that's to be true, but I'm saying if that's true, then if it inspires, and we can imagine how it could inspire a whole lot better than probably 95% of what's on Netflix right now, then it will have done its job better through AI than analog artisans have done for the last 10 years.
Yeah. But it is
I
not the
think
same level
it's
of
going to be
inspiration.
easy to do better by the response of the audience. I've asked this question a lot. Is mass media a quality? Is mass a quality? Like, is a story, you know, that puts butts in the seat in a theater and moves a lot of people, is that a quality compared to a movie that you make and everyone who watches it, they're tuned out in the first 15 minutes? You worked hard on it, cost a
Yeah.
lot of money. We know of
Right.
flops. They're called flops. Snow White
Ha.
took more money than you and I will ever make in our lifetime.
250 million.
Yeah, huge flop.
Yeah.
So apparently it's not one for one. The amount of work you put into something does not tell you what you get out of it.
Right.
I would even say sometimes the gospel is preached and few are saved. And God
Yes.
goes, I got my intended harvest. He didn't go, I was really going for numbers on this one.
Yeah.
Sometimes he
Right.
gets numbers. I think it's implied that numbers are part of it, because after he resurrects, they put the net on one side of the boat. He goes, put it on the other side of the boat, and they can't haul that catch in. And they get to the shore, and Jesus is already cooking breakfast for him. He's cooking fish and a piece of bread. So he already had fish. And he's
Right.
like, this is my catch, what I did. You're going to catch that many. They couldn't even they needed help bringing the boat in. That's the church and our work. And he says, unless someone greater than me comes, someone greater than him came to be, I think, to enable and be able to deputize the church to go out and make disciples. And our harvest of souls is greater than what he did in his lifetime.
Right.
So, but these are all arguments against using numbers as absolutes to quantify art. The most
Yeah.
popular art and music probably isn't as popular as K-pop, Korean pop, or other.
Yes.
I saw a thing where more people know and have listened to K-pop than have listened to all of the Beatles and all of classical music and like Fleetwood Mac and Thriller combined.
But does that make it good? No, not
No, no,
absolutely not.
no, it doesn't. But it had an opportunity to make more people smile, I guess. Maybe the
Yeah.
smile's not as deep.
Right. And is smiling all that life's about? No, not really. Um, but
But that goes against your engagement argument of so it has to now inspire a certain depth before it counts. So Breaking Bad can inspire a little bit, and E.T. inspires more, and Passion of Christ inspires more.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that inspiring people is good. Happiness is great, but happiness is not everything.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
I for things like Snow White, I don't think it's a problem with the amount of effort put in. I think it's a problem with the direction the effort was put.
Yeah, it's the Catholic
Right.
Church making a cathedral. It's not
um,
the work, it's the plans.
yeah, exactly. But these are it's similar, I guess, but the Catholic Church was closer to the truth.
Sure.
They were closer to goodness and beauty because not only was the thing they created, the cathedral, beautiful,
Yeah.
but like as a whole, creating a cathedral is beautiful, but also the individual parts of it were beautiful.
Yeah,
Whereas
I
with
would
something
argue
like
an
Snow White,
atheist like Wagner, pagan, was closer to the truth when he wrote The Ring Cycle.
incredible music,
Because
yeah,
he had that skill set of beauty and that language coming to him. Though it was in the hands of a liar, he wrote something better than most, even modern Christian composers could write. We
absolutely,
have the right message, but not a developed skill set like he did.
yeah, yeah. And this is a somewhat related tangent. There's an interesting phenomena in aerospace engineering that the prettier, the more beautiful the creation is, the better it works generally,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of funny. And I think that's true in this arena
Function
as
is
well.
form, maybe.
Yeah,
So form follows function. It's function is a beautiful form, maybe.
yeah. Function is increased as form. Um, Function is increased by form or something. I don't know. But it's the same kind of thing that if you can create something beautiful, it also works well.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I did my master's thesis on the necessary tie between truth and beauty, the necessary tie,
yeah,
because beauty always gets short shrifted. It's
right,
considered the madman of the trinity of truth, goodness, and beauty. It's like, yeah, beauty, yeah. It's a half clad lady in a forest, I guess, or something. Um, but part of the point I made is how in modern art, as modern art fell apart and became the pursuit of grotesque and the ugly and rebellion, math went through these insane people writing about it, and they said one of the things they said was they would look at a equation and they saw it was beautiful, was how they describe it. I don't know why you'd
Yeah.
use those words, but they use those words.
Right.
And then at a glance, as they realized it was beautiful, they later performed the equation and realized it was also true.
Yes.
So you look at something beautiful and it's probably also true.
But not always.
Not always, but I'm saying we have believed a bit of a lie, which is a desecration of beauty. That first you find out the truth, and then you try and find the beauty in it.
Right.
That's what we've done, and that's, I believe, in postmodernity. That's modernism from the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Really forced us all to think like skeptics like that. Like, we don't trust beauty. We trust fact and the hard truth and the math. And then we'll see if we can apply some of that beauty to it and see if we can find some beauty. These math guys did it opposite. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, they found it beautiful first and then found it to be true.
Yeah. Edward Witten is described as perhaps the best mathematician currently alive, and someone said that once said that his equations um, were beautiful, which exactly what you were saying.
Math
And then
as an
they
aesthetic.
actually, yeah, and he's also the best mathematician. So the equations, like, they worked and they were beautiful, and those two came in harmony. But interestingly, it doesn't go the same way from truth to beauty. If things are true, that doesn't always mean they're beautiful. Um, for
I
instance,
don't think so.
Christian media. I think, well, look at Christian media. There's a lot of truth in it,
Mhm.
but it's not beautiful.
No, I don't agree with that. I think all truth is beautiful. I think they're it's like the Trinity. Uh, one nature, three persons. And the nature of truth, goodness, and beauty are kind of under an umbrella of uh, virtue or truth, capital T truth. There's a small t truth that falls under the capital T truth.
Yeah.
And I think all truth is beautiful. It will it will attain, it attains beauty.
What do you mean by beautiful then?
Yeah, I don't mean aesthetically. That's what Lord von Balthasar wrote in this essay he did, which is great, on beauty. He said, if you limit it to a mere aesthetic, then you've committed you don't understand beauty. So he's not just talking about the physical look of something by it attaining beauty. So it's entirely possible that, like, what Christ did on the cross, it is physically, externally ugly,
Mm-hmm.
but it is the most beautiful thing to ever occur. So I wouldn't
Right.
I wouldn't say it was ugly and therefore a
No.
lie. I would say it is true, or it is beautiful and therefore true. That act of self-sacrifice, you have to expand your definition of beauty to include a grotesque uh, uh, atonement on the cross is a beautiful thing. So I mean,
Right.
we need to change our definition of beauty to include all true things and
Yeah.
all good things.
Yeah. It seems that there you go. The truth and the beauty are in the definition or sorry, the truth and the goodness are in the definition of beauty.
There's a
Um,
capital tree kind of true kind of umbrella.
right.
Probably when you see something true like a math equation, you go, aha! And even that joy or something is a beautiful response. It's correct.
Yeah.
You're snapping in. It all makes sense. The world
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Potentially, beauty is that which is in alignment with God.
Yeah.
Um, and in that way, there are things that are beautiful that don't, to us, maybe look as beautiful, like a cockroach.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is true with God. Like, a lot of Christians say, like, "Oh, it's a fallen world, so it's grotesque that a wasp lays its eggs in a caterpillar and devours it from the inside alive. That was Darwin, saw that one, shocked at how violent God's world is. And I actually think we just need to redefine maybe our idea of God. Maybe either maybe pre-fall that happened, because I believe there could be physical death pre-fall. That's myself.
Hmm.
May not be true. Not spiritual death, because Adam faces spiritual death and he doesn't die on the spot. He
Right.
doesn't die until
Exactly.
they kick him out of the garden and he can't have the tree of life with that flaming sword guarding it. So something had to happen in there. I have a sense that, when you look at old shark bones, they have sharp teeth going all the way back. We don't have any sharks with gums.
Yeah.
So I assume that he created a complete shark that was eating meat with those teeth. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know, because there is the moment when Adam and Eve have sinned, and then God kills an animal and skins it for them and gives them hide as a
Right.
garment to wear, and that's kind of a big moment. That's the first time an animal has, um, I don't remember if it specifies died or been killed, but if there were things like a shark in the waters, surely it had eaten before the
Yeah.
whatever day this was.
It's well, when a shark eats another animal, it's not performing a sacrifice, though. The same reason
No.
why if you see an antelope eaten by a lion, you don't go, that lion murdered it. He
Right.
killed it, and it wasn't making a moral statement. I do think God was making a moral statement when he slaughtered an innocent animal to cover the nakedness of man's sin. Like that is a different act. So that's why I don't apply that to the rest of the animal kingdom. So the idea that a wasp could be doing that to and if you look at nature, I mean, I don't think when we say God's beautiful, he's just talking about lilies of the field and sparrows.
Bunnies. Yeah. Yeah.
Getting close on
Right.
a sparrow and it's covered in mites, and
Yeah.
they they
There's a
they
brutal
they
element of
kick
it.
some of their young out of the nest. They're disgusting. Birds are disgusting. I
Yeah.
I've
This
raised
this is
enough
true.
birds to know they're disgusting and murderous.
Yeah. You
And
don't feature birds in any of your stories, do you?
no, I don't like them.
Uh, you
I
have
raise chickens and I hate them. They're
that's
the
funny.
evilest thing I've seen, man. um,
Yeah, we have my family has a little parakeet, and she hates me, and she will dive bomb me as at
yeah,
any chance she
it's
gets.
getting you. I had a
Yeah.
cockatiel growing up. I love cockatiels, but I'm not going to buy one now. But
Right.
so, anyways, I think we might need to open up our definition of beauty, because there might be stuff that we often dismiss as ugly, and that is God's creation.
Yeah.
So just like, oh, that thing's ugly. I don't know.
The
Leeches,
yeah.
leeches.
Well, right. And I agree with that. But then there are going to be people who say, all right, we open up the definition of beauty, and now we have things like modern art.
Yeah, I don't
We
open it up
have
that far
right.
either.
So the question is kind of, where do you stop it? Where's the objective line?
Well, I know with the modern art thing, I mean, the intent of the creator is to make something ugly. They're trying to desecrate
It's a rebellion.
man's image and God. Yeah, their goal is to make the ugly and not some. Whereas I think when we even see something ugly in a true form of art, like Golem, let's say, um, he has a part in redemption, which enslaves the ugly even to the will of the beautiful.
Yeah.
He like the end all be all is not he's ugly, kill it. You see all the characters in the novel saying that. Why do you keep this thing around? And Frodo
Right.
keeps going, I feel somehow bound to it. It could even be that the fall is something beautiful in that it is part of redemption. And so that's what justifies it and makes it ultimately part of our salvation. You know what I mean?
Right.
That would be why God, by the way, couldn't leave us in the garden a perfect being, but allowed us to fall so that Christ could perform the most beautiful event on the cross, because we never would have experienced that if he didn't make the whole universe, make the earth, have men fall, that the Bible keeps talking about so that he can reveal these secret things about himself that no one knew. And the Jews
Yeah.
reject. They didn't know that part about him, and they see him and oh, ugh, that ain't my God. And
Right.
and those of us who are on the fallen side, we're like, forgive us a sinner. That's my God. We see it. Our whole life depends on it, on that beautiful event. And then and we don't just go, God sent his son and never intended to kill him. The baby Jesus was to sacrifice a life. The incarnation came into the world for one purpose. And that purpose was predated all the way back to Genesis, because you have your heel will crush his head of the serpent,
Right.
from the mother's womb, from the mother. That I think, or as Dallas Willard calls it, the divine conspiracy. I think it's a conspiracy to be cooked in the books all the way back, and that his ways are things. There's a lot of things I think that we would categorize as ugly that God would consider beautiful.
It's almost beautiful in a story sense. Like there are things like
Yeah,
Gollum that are beautiful because of what they contribute to a story,
yeah.
not intrinsic in
Or
themselves.
think of dietary laws, like God is commanding them to call these things unclean,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not an absolute. That definition is not an absolute that they call it unclean, because later is it Peter, open up the big blanket and he says,
Yeah, it's Peter.
do not call unclean what I have declared clean, what I call clean, what I've imputed righteous on.
Yeah.
So those cleanliness laws were not absolutes. That's why you and I can eat shrimp and not be committing a sin. But there are things that are still absolutely unclean, like murdering someone. So you can't murder. You know what I mean? He doesn't say
Right.
that was just conventional for that time. But he declared certain things as local and conventional for that time that were not absolute and eternal, or we wouldn't be able to eat shrimp and
Right.
bacon. And bacon's
Yes.
delicious.
And bacon is fantastic. Yeah. No, this is true. And then the question is, do you define art as what is or do you define beautiful as that which gives glory to God? What do you define art
I think
beautiful
beauty
as?
is well, first of all, our standard is always whatever God thinks is beautiful, we want to think is beautiful.
Right.
We may not know, it may take time, but God is the standard for everything. There's only one standard: be ye perfect
Right.
as your Father in heaven is perfect. So even if I'm thinking of aesthetic standards, or deeper than that, beautiful standards, I think I'm trying to guess what God thinks is beautiful, I guess.
Yeah.
The human
But then there's
form and
right. But then there's things like Gollum, and there's things like um all throughout the Bible, these and all throughout just history, there's just characters that are horrible, and yet
that
they're
what
part
you
of a
intended for
story
evil,
God intends
that
for
is
good.
not beautiful,
Right.
but God intended for good, that is beautiful.
Yeah. Almost as if the entirety of the history of the world is just one big story of God making the ugly things beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, redemption is everywhere. And that
Right.
is an amazing, when artists start tapping into that, I think we're going to get more true good and beauty from all of our art.
So why aren't Christians tapping into that?
Well, we're fallen and we suck. We're fallen and saved by grace. I was just reading in Romans 7 and 8 today. Paul's like going, I do what I do not want to do. He's going like, I've got this thorn that God left in my side, and it keeps me weak so that he gets glory because I'm weak. And then he actually gets to show up and redeem me, and his grace is sufficient for me. And it's like it's a cause. It's like the cause is this fallen state and this weakness in him. And then that's what allows Christ to flourish in him and for him to have faith.
Yeah.
So it's a weird, necessary tie in that story. Why don't Christians tell that story? We ought to be telling it every day, all the time, with our whole life. I think we believe too much of the garbage of our times, of what's in front of our eyes. This year's social media or AI or whatever, or the tools of our time, or culture, is the wrong application of tools in our time. I think we're way too enamored by that. Even the idea that Christians go like, we have to make film. The world makes film. God, I want me some film. I want the Christian film. And then the world's making AI. I got to make me some AI. Whatever trends in the world, and the Christians are all going, well, they do that. So, they
But
have
that's
drag
not.
queen story hour. So we have to have Christian drag queen hour. It's going like, why not just
Yeah.
blow the whole media apart and just be a image bearer and go pioneer a new thing, go make something amazing. Someone had to be the first guy. That's why I like to do the Caves of Lascaux guy, man. You see the paintings in there. I just go, man, someone was the first to paint something on the wall, make that dye and paint a bison. I go, that artist is kind of a stud, because that guy probably didn't have, everyone in the world painting on the walls of art.
Yeah. There were probably a lot of people who disapproved of his bison.
Yeah. He probably didn't get permission. He went in there with a torch. He wasn't paid. Did it. And it's beautiful design. It's some of the best design stuff I've ever seen in my life, is that his interpretation of a bison is the big giant body, because I like the meat and little tiny legs and beautiful colors. And it's amazing.
Looks like a Pixar character.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's got meat on it, man. It's well designed.
Yeah.
I got nothing
But
but
there's.
respect for that guy. The church today, just copying and pasting everything the world was doing. And it's not even what the world's doing now. It's what the world was doing like 20 years ago. They're like, we got to do Christian hip hop, man. I'm going like, dude, it's like 20 years behind and you slap a cross on it. Why don't you go pioneer the new thing?
But we're so bad at finding the new thing.
Yeah, we're not used to creating. I like creating something new.
Yeah.
Yeah,
even
I feel pathetic and like I've traced everyone else, just that I've done video games and comic books and animated series. Those were all processes and institutions that were here before I came along. I want to make the new institution. Musk is probably more Christian in that sense. I'm going to go to Mars. Yeah, that's what a pioneer does.
right. Yeah. No, and here I am doing a podcast.
Yeah, I'm the same way, dude. I'm doing a YouTube podcast doing MAGA politics.
Yeah.
And podcasts are the hot thing. We're about 20 years late, but okay.
Okay. Here we are.
You're allowed. I'm not removing permission. I'm only saying this is not the peak of creativity. What you do with a
it's
podcast
unoriginal.
could be very creative, though.
Yeah,
and I've
it's
often thought of
unoriginal.
that, like, how do you break the rules of podcasting? And like,
Yeah. I think it'd be fun at some point. This is kind of just throwing an idea out there. But interviewing people in what they're doing best. So, for instance, if I came to Franklin and I talked to you while you were drawing, and walk me through your creative process. Walk me through what you're thinking right now. How's it? How's the pen moving across the? I think that could be interesting. Or I want to talk to Phil Mickelson. Great, let's go on a golf course.
I want to interview only old people on their deathbed. That's my idea of the greatest podcast ever. Is just say, tell me about your life and tell me what I really need to know. That'd be an amazing.
Bit of a downer podcast.
I know, but they would unleash, because they wouldn't give a crap what people thought. When they were like, yeah, how about I tell you what I really think now? It'd be the greatest podcast, the most honest podcast ever.
Yeah.
People on their deathbed.
Yeah.
Dude, what's trivial? What should we be forgetting about? And what's really important? And he'd just lay it all down. Be good wisdom. I also wanted to do, here's another one where I wanted to break the whole idea, is make a podcast, like a YouTube channel, but blend it with the found footage horror genre. So just make a horror movie by yourself, but in a podcast where, like, the door's opening behind you and you're like, what's that? What was that? And, like, people grab you and, like, carry you off, and I don't know, scary. Make a horror podcast and pretend like it's real. Be cool.
Yeah. These are all good ideas.
We'll get to them someday or not.
Someday. Yeah. Yeah. It's not bad though for Christians to try and imitate is maybe not imitate, but like it's not bad for Christians to create film. There should be good.
Yeah, I
I
wouldn't
would
say that.
love
I would
good
not say.
Christian films.
Yeah, you're allowed. Well, here's my brackets on the arts, and this is liberating for every artist. You have two brackets in the New Testament that maybe I'm pressing them too far into service, but it's all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial.
Or helpful, yeah.
Or helpful. So you're allowed. You can do anything you want. And then the other one is, if our hearts do not condemn us, we have confidence before God. He's kind of going like, I gave you a Holy Spirit. If you're running into trouble, I'm going to condemn you.
Yep.
And you'll feel your loss of confidence before me. And so we have permission to do anything. So yeah, you're allowed to participate in culture. Everyone doesn't have to be the big mind-blowing leader.
Right.
Or you have a whole bunch of executives and no one to run craft services on your food truck to feed the crew. So that's also the body, being like, the eye can't tell the toe, I don't need you.
Right.
It's okay to be a really good toe.
Yeah. Help the athlete move from place to place.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that with the rise of social media, everyone has wanted to become the eye. Everyone wants to be the brain.
Yeah.
Because that's where, you go on social media, you see all the people who are the brain.
Yeah.
Who are the eye. And they're the ones living the lifestyle.
I think it was Andy Warhol that said, everyone gets their 15 minutes of being the eye.
And some people, it's longer than that.
Yeah.
But that's not I don't know. I don't know how to, how do you fix that is the question. What is it worth trying to fix?
Oh, yeah.
Is it an inherent problem in
Everything
social
broken
media?
that's an inherent problem is worth fixing. So the question is it an inherent problem? Yes, it's an inherent problem that we lean on our own understanding too much, that we forget that we're in the world, not of it. And those are the two things that I think make us ape culture too much to fit in. These kind of artifacts that were, I always tell my kids and other Christians, I go like, you won't go to jail. They go, what if I make a movie and it's terrible? Well, you won't go to jail.
You're probably not going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm afraid if I write this book and my son's thinking about going in the Marines, he's like, I don't know if I'm tough enough. I don't know if I'll make it. Well, you're not going to go to jail if you fail. You might not make it in the Marines, but so go to college or don't go to college. You have the freedom. It's almost the scariest thing in the world to give you the freedom to do anything. But there's all those scriptures about putting your light under a bowl and hiding your talent, burying your talent out of fear of God and all that. You're not allowed to do that. So you're not allowed to fear failure. You need to just go for it and make fruit, make disciples, make the land, take ownership of your chunk of the garden.
Yeah. This is kind of Jordan Peterson's whole thing.
Yeah.
Is you have to go out there and do something, and it is going to be terrifying, but that's kind of just life. So, I mean, what's the worst that can happen?
It's normal. Well, you could die, but
yeah, but then you're dead. So
Paul goes, I get to be with the Lord.
Yeah.
I get to be with the Lord, even if I fail. You do have to do something.
Right. Yeah. Can't sit in your mom's basement forever.
Yeah. And I kind of told my kids too, like, I just don't want you to be mediocre, and I don't want you to be an automatic cog. Like, just go along, Go for excellence. Be as good as you
Exceptional.
can be. Produce fruit. But most importantly is like get married and have children. Like I don't get the whole go pursue the arts like it's your big life mission, but kids and marriage is optional. I don't believe that. And so many kids are just like going, what am I going to do with my career? I'm like, put like 1/10 of this effort into dating. This is to your generation. It's like, dude, you got beautiful people laying around, all around good people. And they're like, well, I can't do that. I got to go do my career for waste about a quarter, probably a third of my life on education. Then I'll start life after I've finished about a third of it when I'm 24, graduated my master's.
All true. That's why I only did a year at college.
Good
I
man.
dropped out. This is not for me. And then I went to Africa.
Good man.
But yeah, there's an incentivization that's not always bad. Like it's not bad to go to college, and
I agree.
to, um, it's not bad to always be a strive to not be a cog in the machine. You do need someone to like flip the burgers at McDonald's, but that doesn't mean you should be a cog in your family.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of people who confuse those two.
Yeah. And I think there's a wonderful way to flip burgers that is very uncog like. And you probably want to do that version of it.
Oh yes,
So even
absolutely.
if you're in a cog, pursue excellence, do it well, do it to the glory of God, even if you have a low job. And really, I mean, what job is high compared to God? You know, he's looking down on King Solomon going, you're nuts. He's like the smart, wisest guy in the world. He's just going mad at the end of his life. I worked every day and I do excellence. I pursue the wisdom of the world. And it just gets inherited by these dumb kids and this whole society, and it's meaningless. It's like God's going, yeah, you reach the top, you rang the bell, and it too, it's all kind of wind chasing till we get to the other side.
Yeah, but you should chase the wind.
Absolutely, you should with
Chase it
gusto,
as
my
hard as you
friend.
can.
With
Yeah,
gusto. Create. Doing nothing is a wrong answer. Doing nothing is evil. Being apathetic and not caring and unplugging, that's also, I think that's a sin. I think that's a terrible, the temptation of our time, I think.
only enhanced by the constant amount of entertainment that is available at your fingertips.
Yeah, disposable income and leisure time are not good for man, and we have a ton of
No,
it.
no. My dad has a thing on retirement. He was at a conference recently, and some fellow raised his hand, older gentleman, and he said, "Why is the younger generation so bad at working?" And he said, "Well, your generation is the one who decided that they were going to work as hard as they can and then retire and play golf for the rest of their lives,
Yeah,
and Gen Z is just the one skipping the first step."
yeah, yeah,
It's
good. And I'm
I,
I just and I'm an artist, so I'm going to work till the day I die just to pay rent. So
yeah,
I don't even have a choice.
yeah,
I'll never
yeah,
retire. I'm an artist making a
yeah,
living.
yeah. And then this is all kind of tying back. Is art then for the soul? Is art for the artist? Or is it for the audience?
Well, in my case, I'm a mass media performance artist, so it is for the audience. So I do draw for my skill myself. That's often where I practice my skills and create and enjoy. For me, it's more like a journal. But when I put on a show for someone, it's go time and it's time to work and it is and the audience reaction is important to me. I'm not going to change everything I do to engage them. Um, I think we've changed quite enough just choosing to do a podcast. And a lot of my content on YouTube, it is regurgitating political kind of agitprop. That's my main living. It's much more like flipping burgers than being Bono, when my daily grind.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's like I'm getting paid like $30 a video. It's literally like, minimum wage.
right.
So sometimes it hits big, you create, and sometimes it hits big, and then you create, and sometimes it hits small. but I never feel like, oh, I never should have created. I should have played more PlayStation.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Go
But
make. There's no
interestingly,
shame in a good day's hard day's work making, and know when to cut bait. You kind of go, I've got some wisdom.
yeah,
Nothing's moving for me these past 3 4 months, and so maybe I need to move on to something else or adjust.
right. Yeah. Oddly, there's a strange push from the mass media that if you create, and maybe this is just an American thing as well, if you create something that is truly meaningful to you, then the people will come. They will show up. They will arrive in numbers, um, because you're being true and authentic to yourself.
Mm.
Is that from an artist's perspective? Um, do you worry about that? Do you worry about being authentic?
I'm authentic. I mean, this is me. So I care less and less about putting up, working so hard to please, say, a super ignorant culture or super foul people. But I don't think the cause of people coming to you is authenticity. I think we recognize patterns and we feel comfortable in our culture. So sometimes we put on the robe of culture to disguise, we're sheep in wolves clothing. So you're saved, but you put on the skin of this fallen society and kind of Trojan horse. The that's how Frodo and Sam got into Mordor. They dressed like orcs.
Yeah,
They were small and unnoticeable, and that's what allowed them to deliver that blow to the beast. So I don't mind if you're using tactics of like the decorator crab, of camouflaging in the world making film, and you're just really there just to do a reverse knife kick, right when you get close enough to the heart or whatever. I think the problem is most of us, you take on the skin of the world and you realize, hey, I can fit in pretty good around here. And then it's
right.
tempting because
It
you
becomes
go,
your own skin.
yeah, and you never end up dealing that death blow. You've been
Right.
camouflaging the whole time. And now what's the difference between you and everybody else? You look, act, and talk just like everybody else. So I
Yeah.
probably sound like I'm contradicting myself on that, but I don't think being authentic will cause people to come to you because there's too many people who lie who cause people to come to them. And sometimes
Yes.
authenticity is how you lose all your friends and drive everyone away. In a world that only values lies and you're the only one telling the truth, you are incredibly unfashionable. But you do still have a job. I think you have a job to be authentic and to tell the truth. And I want you to show up in your work so that you're not just replaceable with any other person who says the same kind of dumb, safe stuff. I really like people, and I like when people show up and I like when madmen kind of blow everything up. Like you go,
Yeah.
oh man, now that's a human being. That guy's not a slave to anyone.
He's alive.
He's alive. Takes a live things swim against the grain. Chesterton said, only a live fish can swim upstream.
Yeah.
Dead
One of my
dead
favorite
things
books
go
ever.
downstream.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is Man Alive,
Oh
also by
yeah.
Chesterton. It just kind of expounds this principle. Um, how do people become alive if they aren't at the moment? They feel kind of stuck in their lives.
Stop fearing failure. Stop fearing risk. If you count the cost, you'll do nothing. And worry will not buy you one more day of life. So I just don't think, I don't want to say people should be like suicidal risk takers, but I think we're too risk averse. Even podcasters, you look at all of them, I just go, no one is showing me real vulnerability, and it takes vulnerability for us to have intimacy. And if you don't show vulnerability, it's because you don't trust your audience. You don't trust people. You're like, if I am vulnerable to this person, they're going to use it against me if I ever tell you the truth of who I am. So I actually think there's a place for people being vulnerable, maybe not in public, but uh,
Yeah.
some level of vulnerability that's more vulnerable than just putting on all the makeup and putting on a show.
I think that's probably for a private life, not as much for a podcast, is kind of my personal
I
view.
don't know, but like Jordan Peterson, we like him, and he's pretty vulnerable. Guy's
I can only handle so much,
Practically
Jordan.
crying on every episode.
Yeah, this is
He's
true.
not guarding himself and trying to look cool.
Well, he is, but he's trying to look cool, disguised as not caring.
Sure. I mean, the two-toned coat was a giveaway. When he had that coat,
that was the
Joker-
moment for you.
The Joker coat. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think there's too much vulnerability at the moment. I think there's too many people being expressive about their
everyone's
feelings.
bleeding all over you.
Yeah, everyone's just emotionally vomiting all over the place.
Yeah, and you can use that can be used also. You already know there's a weaponization of that too.
Yeah.
Of the kind of the fake kabuki tears and even fake anger.
Right.
Emotional manipulation. It's why I like Doug Wilson's preaching. The guy doesn't raise his voice. I would be screaming all the time if I was him. But he's just like laying it down. Reading
the most
his
relaxed
sermon.
person.
Yeah, I really respect kind of guys that, and that's probably a much older form of wit because he reads P.G. Wodehouse and so much Chesterton that it's
Love
much
P.G.
older than
Wodehouse,
just like,
yeah.
I'm just going to lay down this thing that is so factual. I don't have to back it up with a whole lot of emotional manipulation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we need more of that and less vulnerability, less emotions.
Less public emoting.
Less public emoting would be fantastic, I think, for all involved. Do you ever worry about making your art Christian? Standing out as Christian in the way that you create?
I don't worry, period, but
there you go, yeah.
It's as Christian as I've ever felt like making it. So there's lots of Christian in it. Too much for some, certainly, and not enough for others. So I've heard from both sides of it. I do think my art tells the truth. I feel pretty confident. Like when I put brush to paper, I just don't feel like I really need to defer to other people, and I'm not afraid of. I'm more afraid of what I think than what other people think of my art.
Absolutely, I
I'm
feel
way
that.
harder on myself than other people are.
Yeah, yeah, and creating true and beautiful and good things.
Yeah, like, oh, Doug, that's not true enough. You could have restated that, or that's not beautiful enough. You could have worked on that another 15 minutes and bumped it up, 50%, and you didn't. So and other people are going like, your art's great. I'm like, it's barely hanging on, man.
Not to me, it isn't. There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. It's for me. I love Earthworm Jim. I've read all the comics, cardboard, etc.
Oh, thank you so much.
So yeah,
Thank you so much.
it's been a pleasure talking to you. Where can people? What can they expect for you in the next couple months or so?
I'm just doing YouTube videos right now.
Okay.
Over on the Doug TenNapel channel on YouTube. It's me ranting pro-Trump and anything anti-liberalism that I can do. That's my bias.
Doug in Exile.
My name is Doug in Exile is kind of my nickname, but the actual channel name is Doug TenNapel. But yes, I am permanently in exile.
Fantastic. There you go. Thank you so much. I'll put links in the description. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Jackson, it's my pleasure too. Thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Anytime, buddy. Anytime.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool.
See you guys.
Thank you, brother.